The Articulate Coven is the original, unofficial podcast and fan community for Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire and Anne Rice's Immortal universe from AMC and AMC Plus. Welcome to The Articulate Coven. We're your hosts. I'm Joel.
I'm Ashley.
And we are The Articulate Coven. Ashley, you know my favorite thing about the Mayfair Witches series being on the air right now and us talking about that right now?
What is it?
My favorite thing of all is the fact that I do not live or die by other people's opinion of this show in the same way that I did and continue to of IWTV. You know, whenever I read criticism of Interview with the Vampire, whether I agreed with it even a little bit or not, did you
take it very personally?
My hackles, and I immediately sort of jumped to defend the show. I did. I took it very personally, very, very personally.
Like someone's talking about your mama.
There's been some strong criticism of this show, especially from our group. I think generally the reviews, I think at large, have been largely positive. Not as overwhelmingly in love as the reviews for Interview, but still largely positive. However, from our own group, I've seen several different voices that have said, man, this is way off track, at differing levels of whether they're going to be able to continue to enjoy it or not. But it seems like our little corner of the internet, at least, is much less happy with this adaptation than the previous one. And thankfully, I really don't care. Actually, it turns out I've seen the first episode now. I've listened to a lot of that feedback, and it doesn't affect me one way or the other. So that's my overarching thoughts about this. How do you feel now that we bask in the glow of the first episode's release?
Okay, I loved it. I was really skeptical of this one, and I don't know why. I was a little nervous about it. I was just, I don't know. I didn't feel as prepared for it, I guess. And maybe that's it. I don't know. Hell, I really liked it. And I really like the changes they've made, the way they've adapted it. I think that we're going to get this kind of flashback and flash forward kind of storytelling throughout this. So I feel like we're still going to get our backstory of all of our very cool, beloved witches. I really think that the way that the changes they've made and a lot of the things they've done is really clever. And there were a couple of things I found myself really grossed out and creeped out by, which I was super excited by, and just my initial on this first watch, I gotta say, I'm way more into it than I thought I was going to be.
I am not. I'm not more into it than I thought I was going to be. I will say I didn't expect this one to grab me in the same way that Interview does. I've never loved the Mayfair Witches in the same way that I loved the Vampire Chronicles. We just finished talking about this first book, and I told everybody, I hold these main characters, Rowan and Michael in particular, I hold them at a remove as characters. I do not fall in love with them. I do not connect with them in the same way. And I got to thinking about it today. Is it just the Vampire Chronicles? No, it's not. In particular, the Mummy series, Ramses the Damned, which, if I recall correctly, is also not written in first person. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong there, but I don't believe it is. I love all of those characters, honestly.
No, I think you're right. I don't think it is. Yeah, I love the Mummy.
And then if you go one step further, it's Servant of the Bones, one of her
standalones, one
of her single book, adventures. I really, really loved that one. I haven't read it since the very beginning, since it came out, but I loved it when it came out. I am looking forward to revisiting it. Anyway, it's not just the vampires that I love, but I don't connect with Rowan and Michael as much as I do later with Mona. I've always liked Mona more in Lasher when she really comes into her own than I liked Rowan.
Right.
And then later Mona reappears in the VC, and I enjoy her appearances there, whereas Rowan in her appearances and crossovers sort of felt a little weird to me. Anyway, I was okay with this just being a show. And I think it's going to be a better than average show. Overall, the feeling that I'm getting, the sense that I'm getting from folks that don't, live and breathe the Mayfairs and Anne Rice in general, is that they might like this one more. The one comment that Kelly really had, and I mentioned this in our group, but my wife, she's not an Anne Rice reader. She doesn't know this world. She is a reader. I said this once before,
right.
That she doesn't.
God.
She's not a reader. I meant she doesn't read these books. She knows how to read, and she does read for fun. Anyway, she doesn't read these books, though, and she doesn't, have this deep, abiding historical nostalgia or love for the Mayfairs or for any of Anne Rice's characters. And to her, this series, at least in its pilot episode, feels, as she put it, more straightforward than Interview did. It felt less insular or like a world that's, you have to really unlock to be able to enjoy, which is kind of the way that she described Interview. She's thankfully got a translator and me sitting beside her anytime she gets, confused or wants something expounded upon. But here she didn't really need it. She was, as a matter of fact, leading our discussion when we were talking about the things that happened in the first episode, because she felt like she got it all, understood what they were driving at, and overall enjoyed it. Both of us had a few comments that were negative, but generally she's into it. And I think a lot of people like her are going to be into this, Ashley.
Well, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the way that they've fleshed out the story, and it's we're seeing most of this in our modern day. We're getting some flashbacks with Deirdre so far, and those are fantastic. But for the most part, we've got a story about a woman who's tough, smart, ambitious, afraid, and alone, and she's trying to figure out and something fucked up's going on in her life, and she's trying to figure out what is going on and what she is and who she is. And I think that that's something that almost everyone can relate to, that journey of self-discovery that so many of us go on and have to, that all of us go on, figuring out who we are at the core of ourselves, figuring out who we want to be. And also, when you have something that feels so aberrant happening to you, to need answers. And I think that that's such a great way to set this her going home up so well. They explained why they didn't, why she didn't have the Mayfair name. And it's all things that wouldn't matter to a person just watching it. It makes sense. It's like, hey, you got to give these things up to have this baby. That makes sense. It doesn't feel like, it feels like you're going to learn the lore as you go along, not that you already have to be in on the secret, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And I think that's exactly what Kelly was getting at. It is interesting. It occurred to me, Ashley, we never really set the table for who we are and what this is if somebody's joining us for the first time.
Oh, yeah. We just ripped into it.
We are the unofficial podcast for Anne Rice's Immortal universe and all the shows from AMC and AMC Plus. In particular, tonight we're going to be covering the Mayfair Witches episode 1, season 1. The Witching Hour
premiere
is the name of this episode. And Ashley, that right there is what I want to start with as far as our discussion of this episode specifically. You've got a great take on Rowan that I want to get back to, but right from the start, something struck me as a little off about this show in comparison to Interview with the Vampire, which came before. We've covered that previously in episodes. If you haven't watched that show or haven't listened to our coverage, please go back and check it out. There's a lot of good stuff there. But this title, I think, was one of the things that irked me. The first time I watched it, I didn't really understand why. The second time, I'm sitting there watching the creators' discussion at the end of the Insider episode piece after the episode is over. Which
love it.
Thank you, AMC, for doing those. HBO's been doing those for several years. I love them.
Me too.
I wish all the streaming services did them. Simple, doesn't have to be 3 minutes long. That's plenty, whatever. But give me a little something about this episode specifically.
A little insight.
Some of the creative team. AMC continues to do that. Yeah, exactly. But on this one, it finally struck me why I didn't like it. All of the titles of Interview with the Vampire episodes came from Anne's poetry directly. They come from her dialogue, from her lines within the original book. Not all of them are in the quote-unquote right place or even from the right character, but many of them are mentioned directly in the episode as well as in the title. Sort of a cool way to tie things together, and every time you read it, you get a little glimpse forward into what that episode is going to be about if you're a book reader, and it's a nice moment when it comes up in conversation from the characters themselves. Here, they're not doing that. They call this episode The Witching Hour, and I forget her name, but the creator that was speaking at the end says that they wanted to use that title because they wanted to, call out from the beginning that they're really telling specifically the story of the first book here. And I took that to mean, honestly, and at the end of this episode, I take it even more so to mean they're really telling Rowan's story here. I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of depth this season on the family at large And I think that's one of the reasons why we have like Cortland, for instance, as a living character here instead of someone in recent, dead memory for the story itself in modern day. I think he's going to be our tie to a little bit of the historical. I think we are going to continue to get maybe some more young Deidre, but that'll be the extent. And it'll be season 2 before we go into the depths of the files of the Talamasca, which I guess makes sense based on the way that they're setting this up. And again, this is all me reading into a lot of this one comment with the title of The Witching Hour. Here's my problem, though, Ashley. I guess that makes sense if that's what they're going to do. But The Witching Hour is a title of one section of the book already, and it's a section that comes much, much later, effectively at the climax of the book. There's nothing in this episode that calls to mind that title or says to me that this is The Witching Hour. In fact, this is a very spooky setting. It very much reminded me of early seasons of American Horror Story, or something like that. I think they're very much going for a similar vibe. And hey, that's a big audience that's already out there and probably, maybe didn't watch Interview with the Vampire. So kudos to all of that, but it struck me as wrong, and I think it boils down to this. This is the difference. I think for Interview with the Vampire, they found people, creatives, in the writing room, the directors, the actors, etc., that are in love with the source material. And I think here they found people who are very competent television creatives. And I don't know that this one might not work better as far as like a success on TV than giving it to people who are in love with the source material.
I think there's something to be said for the fact that this source material is not as poetic as Interview with a Vampire. It's not nearly, the language is not remotely the same to me at all. I think it's a lot harder to like drum up some, beautiful romance in some of the language in this particular book. It's just not, it's not as it's not as flowery, it's not as poetic, it's not as, imagery evoking. It's kind of more meant to evoke emotion instead of, this beautiful lush imagery. Just a very different books to me, very different styles of writing within them as well. And I think it could be just as simple as like, this is, we're calling it The Witching Hour because that's the name of the first book and this is where we're starting. Boom. Chapter 1, off we go. You know what I mean? I think that it's a lot easier to write in a lot of that poetry when it comes to the Vampire Chronicles, and maybe that has so much to do with our preference for it, But I will say, I do love these books a lot. I do enjoy them, and I think I'm probably feel a little more connected to them than you do. And maybe that's more like just me connecting a little bit more with some of the characters, But yeah, I think that, it's just not the same. It's just not as flowery and, I don't smell things. I smell the mustiness of that house and I smell the dust. I don't smell like the night blooming jasmine. You know what I mean? It's just not as easy to fall in love with the words.
That's very fair. Yeah, no, that is 100% fair. You were talking before I so rudely interrupted and reset the table on this episode, but
we got it
specifically about our protagonist here, Rowan. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we gotta start from the beginning, so to speak. But I want to get back to Rowan here and hear your take on Alexandria Daddario. We talked a lot about her in the lead up to this in our discussions on Dorian and in our discussion of the Witching Hour novel itself. But what did you think in this first episode? How has Alexandra set the table for you for Rowan?
She feels tougher than I expected her to. Now, I expect that from Rowan, but I wasn't sure. To me, Alexandria Daddario has this very kind of delicate, sort of fragile quality to her, and it was really cool to see her kind of push past that and change my mind about her. Her voice is perfect. Her voice is so great. That's something that's really very pointed out in the book, very specifically. Rowan's voice, she's got like a whiskey voice. It's a lower kind of purring sort of voice, and I love that she sounds so good. I'm interested to see how it goes on, but to see her kind of kind of flex her badassery when she went off on that doctor. You know, both times she went off on the doctors. I was nice to see that side of that character that I was afraid wasn't going to be there 100%. And then also, Rowan likes to fuck. Like, Rowan wants to fuck. And I'm glad that we got a taste of that in there too. Like, they're showing her as a well-rounded character, because she truly is, as far as the way she's written. She's got a lot of complexity to her, and I think that it's really great that we're, like, right off the bat, episode 1, you're showing me a lot of different facets of her.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? I agree with you on her toughness. I do think that in particular, I love this scene where she is washing up after the surgery with I don't know what that other woman's position is, but the woman attending that was with her. And she comes into the room and is immediately like, God, that guy's such a menace. Thank God you were there. And Rowan's like, hey, lower your voice. This is our jobs. And then even as they're having a real discussion about it, kind of on a lowered tone, Rowan's like, yeah, but listen, I was there. It worked out fine. And if I would have just outright called him on it, it would have been way worse for everybody. And she's like, yeah, maybe, but not for you, et cetera, et cetera. And I love the fact that she is navigate in that one scene. I think that was one of the best scenes in the whole episode, in my opinion, as far as Rowan's character, because it did a great job of shorthanding the way that she's been able to navigate the politics of a male-dominated industry, where she's clearly risen very high at a very young age. Which, by the way, I will say, Alexandria does a great job of displaying Rowan's youth in a way that the novel does not. Rowan is very young, much younger than Michael, and yet in the novel they always feel like contemporaries, whereas here,
they really do.
Alexandria
That's really
feels
true.
Age-appropriate for Rowan's age.
Yeah, she does. I totally agree with that. I loved the relationship with Ellie, with her mother. It was lovely to see them being so close. They ditched the stepfather that she killed, which was, not a bad loss. You can kind of move the story along that way. I think they did a really good job of getting this story off to the races. You know what I mean? Like, we're not fucking around. Here we go. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the next couple of episodes go, as far as how long we're going to let Deirdre live. It's going to be very interesting to see how the next few episodes go.
So I won't mention it here. We'll mention it at the end of the episode when we're talking about some speculation. But
that was a total spoiler speculation too. Sorry, y'all.
No, not at all. There have been a couple of posts on our Facebook group, though, that mention some IMDb listings for characters' appearances. That would sort of give you a hint at how long this might go. So, but we'll talk about some of that at the end of the episode. Speculation on how this will unfold. I'll tell you, I'm pleased, because I genuinely thought Rowan would be in New Orleans by the end of episode 1, based on the trailer, based on the way that I thought this was going to play out, also based on the fact that I assumed it was a 6 or 7 episode first season, like Interview with the Vampire. I think it's actually a full 8 episodes for this. So, I think they're going to have a little bit more time to breathe than I thought they were going to. The other thing that you have to realize is, we don't really know anything about Cyprian yet. So they haven't had to develop at all the character of, Michael, quote unquote, or Aaron from the novels that Cyprian Grieve is replacing. So you had a full hour for Rowan's growth basically all together.
Right.
Let me insert here something that I didn't think about in watching it at all, but I realized in retrospect when I talked to Kelly, she thought that this was happening, and several of our listeners said so in either our Discord group or our Facebook, which, by the way, we've got a great Discord community and a great Facebook group, depending upon which one you'd prefer, or maybe join both if you're just up for it. Those links are in the show notes. Check them out. But in one of those places, someone brought up the idea that, and first of all, they're not a Mayfair reader. They had not read these books, even though they're a Anne Rice fan. So they went into this thinking, until very late in the episode, actually, that what we were seeing was the story of Rowan as both a young woman and an old woman. They thought the character of Deidre on the porch in the catatonic state
was Rowan.
Actually Rowan as an old woman.
Oh.
Yes. And in retrospect, watching it the second time, knowing that Kelly read it that way too, I watched it with that eye, and I got to tell you, I think they very specifically, and I didn't realize this at the time because I knew when that scene, when the doctor comes to the porch to see Deidre, I know that's the present. And then I knew that we were looking at Deidre's, because I've read the novels, right? And then I know we're looking at Deidre's youth there. And so I know, okay, well, we've got to go back at least 20 some odd years. So this is what, the 70s maybe, or the 80s. And when she's that young, and I guess in retrospect, let's see, Rowan's younger than I am, so it would actually be more like the 90s or the early 2000s, even if this is real modern day. Boy, that's head screwing to think about the fact that Rowan's probably like 20 years younger than you and I are, Ashley.
Yep, 100%, absolutely.
Not quite 20, but close.
Not quite 20.
Anyway,
because she did go to med school.
Right. So realistically, I guess Rowan's probably got to be 29 or 30 at this point, based on like the level of med school, and then she's already full. She's a full doctor at this point. She's a surgeon. So anyway, I'm slightly off track. That concept of playing with timelines and sort of setting up people's expectation and being like, oh, we're telling one story, but no, we're telling two. And it's, we're telling the story from both ends to meet in the middle kind of thing. I hadn't read it that way at the first, since I know this novel so well and we just talked about it. But I do think that's the way it's going to play for mainstream audiences, which to me, I immediately go, oh, are they maybe going to continue to play with timelines in this way so that we see like mirrors of moments? For instance, I'll skip ahead slightly. The final scene, or the climax of this episode, which is Rowan's birth, we see in the past with Deidre, and we see Ellie's death in the present day with Rowan. And the mirror of Ellie's death and Rowan's birth is a beautiful moment. And I immediately flashed forward to some moments in the book. I won't spoil and mention here, but there are a couple of moments, at least I can think of, that you could see new scenes, extra scenes that would do that same thing and mirror either a birth and a death, or maybe a wedding and a death, or something, So anyway, I got excited
wedding and
for
funeral,
that. And
absolutely.
I think, those converging timeline kind of ideas is, first of all, that's a trope that I think quote unquote normal audiences understand, even from something like Lost, where eventually that had like a sci-fi explanation that this show won't have. But the idea of that we're going to tell stories, or This Is Us, which tells like a modern storyline with the kids, and then the storyline of mom and dad in the 70s or whatever, or 80s, raising them. Right,
absolutely. I mean, we're all used to that kind of structure within a television show, for sure. It's very common, and I think it's a great way to kind of delve into such a giant source material. I mean, this book is effing huge. It's like almost 1,000 pages long. So I think they're being very judicious with what they're cutting and snipping, and just getting to the meat of the story so far has been really great. And I'm with everybody that's like, I feel your concerns about, losing some really great characters, but already I feel like better about it than I did, and I'm very, I'm a very positive member of any fandom. I'm like, I even liked the prequels and Star Wars. So, I'm maybe not the best judge of everything, but I'm looking forward to seeing like how much of this we get. That's kind of part of it for me too, is like, how much of the story do we get, and how much of it are they going to hold off, and maybe we don't get that part of the history until season 2, and maybe it gets delved out in little bits and pieces, the history of the Mayfair Witches over the entire course of the series, as opposed to like, this is part of how we're going to introduce this first season and this first book. Because the action of the first book is Rowan. It is Rowan's experience. It's Rowan finding out who she is, finding out her family, finding out her place in the world, and then it's her moving the ball forward. From then on, it's her, like, she wanted to start the hospital. She wants to do all these great things. She wants to use her powers to save lives,
Yes, absolutely. And she will do all of those things, at least, or would, if not for a certain floaty invisible man sometimes that has his own way. Let's talk for a moment.
That invisible devil penis.
Let's talk for a moment about that invisible devil penis.
Yes.
My wife was unimpressed with Jack Houston. I kind of wondered if she would be swept off his feet. She was not familiar with the actor Jack Houston playing Lasher here. I know him from Boardwalk Empire, and I have all day I've been trying to think of the name. I don't know why I haven't Googled it yet. I forget his character's name, but he was a good friend of the sort of the main character in season 1, Tommy. They'd been to war together. He's got a bad injury. He's, half of his face is missing, and he's got a mask, a prosthetic, portion of his face that covers this up, and he wears it with like glasses that hold it onto his face. His character has the most satisfying arc of the entire show, and it's a great show from top to bottom. I'm pretty sure I've praised him already on this podcast when his casting was announced, but I was ready to love his character before this show premiered. I wondered if Kelly would fall in love with him like I was sure I was going to. She came away very unimpressed. Doesn't like his haircut. Doesn't really like his voice.
I'm a little meh.
And she's like, why?
I'm a little meh myself.
If he's like this super sexy ghost that's haunted this family for 1,000 years or whatever, like you couldn't find a better looking dude. And she likes, unconventionally handsome
why does the suit jacket not fit? I mean, like, why does his costume not fit?
That's not Lasher's fault. That's costuming.
No, but that's like, seriously, like that's part of it, because I'm with her. I was kind of like, meh. He didn't really have me until he got scary, until it was that scene with young Deidre, and he was very scary. Like that was when I was like, okay, maybe this is why they cast him. So I'm not giving up on him as being grand yet, but I'm not sold. I'm not sold at all. I don't know who else I would have cast, though.
I agree with you that that's a great scene from him. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. Who are you? It's almost like, and we talked about this with Lestat before we got Sam Reed. It's like, who do you cast? We don't know. We don't know the person, honestly. We want somebody who can fill the role, and casting directors generally know better than we do. And God knows the casting director and director in this case have spent much more time with Jack and lots of other options than you and I have. I'm sure they know what they're doing, and Jack's a very fine actor. I'm sure that this is going to come off fine in the end. Here's the one knock that I had in the first episode. I did enjoy his performance generally. I love his vocal delivery and the way that they make him appear and disappear and come around the room, and he's sort of ever present. I think all of that is very good. Here's what I
do like that.
I just think it's totally unnecessary. So it wasn't executed well, and it wasn't necessary, and the combination of that really bums me out. That same scene where he's sort of, and it's interesting. It's there's the scene in Job where Job is sort of appealing to God towards the end, and God is questioning him. It's one of the greatest lines in the whole Bible. It's one of my favorites. He says, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?" And anytime I think about like grandiose, egotistical human beings, I think of that line.
Villains.
Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? I think it's just one of those humbling moments, right? Yeah. But here, Lasher has that moment sort of where he swells his grandiosity, what's the line from Aladdin? Great cosmic power, itty bitty living space. That's sort of Lasher's deal here. He swells himself up and he's sort of like puffing himself up for Deidre, but they go and show it in this like weird morphing transformational thing where I'm every woman, I'm no person,
I thought it was gross and scary.
Like, I understand. It was a little gross, I guess, especially the 3-headed version at the end. I guess maybe a little bit, body horror. We talked about body horror last week in the episode about the novel, and are we going to get some of that? I definitely think we are, by the way, based on this first episode. I just didn't love those effects. I thought they were a little cheap, and in particular, it was one of the moments that really showed, in my guesstimation, I haven't looked up the hard numbers, I bet they spent less money on this show than they did Interview with the Vampire, and that's one of the places where I felt like it showed.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I think that Lasher is a tricky character. He's like, so I love The Stand by Stephen King. Is probably it's my favorite book. It is the villain in that book, Flag, has been horribly miscast every time anyone's done anything to do with this character. And I don't understand why they can't get it right. And I've seen people get cast in it that I thought would kill it and then proceeded to be not grand. So I think that it's tricky, these kind of supernatural characters that are supposed to be in one way terribly horrifyingly frightening, and in another way completely attractive and seductive. It's just a tricky casting call. It is. It's gonna. That's why I'm not giving up on him yet. I'm gonna give him a chance because I do like his voice. But I hope his suit. I'm real mad about that costume. I'm real mad about it. Takes me right out of it. I feel like those buttons are just clinging to life, and that is not a large man. Give him a half inch in the back of that, for Christ's sake.
Maybe in AMC's cost-cutting maneuvers, what they'll do is they'll combine the costume.
They got rid of their tailor
of The Witching Hour and Interview with the Vampire. So the Interview with the Vampire folks will just get to make the costumes for everybody, since these worlds.
And he's wearing a tiny suit.
Okay, so. Yeah, he's wearing it. Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Maybe they'll give him a real suit that fits. I mean, all of Sam Reed's fits were excellent, right? We talked about the fashion there. Surely somebody can just send some notes over and we can get Houston sized up properly.
Oh my God. Well, no, that's what I'm confused about. Okay, also I have to bitch about this. What's with the fucking long sleeve nightgowns in New Orleans? It is hot. It's so hot. It's so hot. Like the cost. That's another thing that I was a little like, Jesus, witches. Like, my God, can we have a tank top in here at all? No, long sleeves. Bless. Poor Deirdre.
Man, that house feels smoldering, if nothing else.
I hate it. Yeah. I love how sweaty the doctor was.
Like, boy, it's hot in that house. Yes.
Yeah, you could see like the heat waves almost.
He looks like the guy that comes out of the house in Forrest Gump and he like wipes
Oh my
his
God,
face.
after,
He's like,
yes.
Yo mama showed us care about your education.
Care about your education. Yes, he's literally like, I loved it. That was one of those touches that I was like, oh hell yeah, it's hot in that house. And they're making sure we know it. It's uncomfortable there. It is not a warm, happy home. It is a stifling place of hellish mischief.
I am really, really hopeful that we are going to get a scene where Carlotta, either as a young woman or as an old woman, I don't care. Either one will work fine. Maybe both,
yeah.
Even. Give us both. I want to see her attempt to burn the house down. Like either lash her, stop her.
Right. Oh, me too. Yes. Yes.
This Carlotta has absolutely tried to burn that house down before.
This actress is such a badass. I love her so much. She's always fantastic in whatever she's in. She's such a great character actor. And there were a couple people in our Facebook group that were like, I'm not sure she's mean enough. Oh, I guarantee you this bitch is going to be mean enough. I could feel it just simmering in her.
Yeah, we just haven't. So we only got, a couple of moments with her dragging Deidre out of the car, and scolding her on the way up to the room before the party scene at Cortland's. And then at the end when she's giving the baby away, that's about it.
Yeah. And I'm telling you.
So that's where I wanted to go next. I wanted to talk about Harry Hamlin. Here for a minute. So
what a creep.
You mentioned earlier oh boy, what a creep. What a tremendous creep.
I'm so glad he's such a creep. Like,
first of all,
they've done this very well.
No, they did. They absolutely did. We mentioned in last week's episode about the novel, the lack of Julian's appearance in any of the IMDb listings or casting announcements, and everybody kind of panicking about that in that they've written him out. I don't think that they've written him out. I get a sense that Harry may not be around for like the long haul of this series. And the idea is that they were going to go really over the top with Cortland in the modern day. And because of that, Julian would feel like an echo, or Cortland would feel like a bad echo. And now you get to do that across seasons, right? You get to have Julian's story perhaps in the second season, and he won't be in Cortland's shadow. It'll feel like, oh, this was where Cortland got it from.
Right, right. It's like every generation it gets, well, and I don't, that's not accurate. It's not accurate at all, but it's like, it's something interesting about this is that it's Cortland, it seems like Cortland knows what Lasher wants in a way. You know what I mean? Like, he's like luring Deirdre in to, deliver a child for Lasher. So I'm wondering if like we're gonna see some of that Julian had that familiarity with Lasher. Julian was the only male in the family that saw Lasher, and that was considered a witch along with all the lady witches. So I don't know. I think it's going to be. I'm interested to see how far they're willing to go with how awful Cortland is, because I also think Cortland's like worse than Julian. I feel like that just from reading it, but I just think inevitably Julian is a little bit more likable of a character because he's more fun than Cortland, and he's I don't know, but they're all terrible.
You're okay. Both of those things are 100% true. They are all terrible. First, and that goes for literally all of the Mayfairs. But then also, Julian is in the book written to be more sympathetic and likable than Cortland. I think it basically comes down to this: we see inside Julian, both in the Witching Hour and again, even in more depth, you see some more stuff in the Lasher novel. You kind of see inside Julian. You get a glimpse through his diaries and through, his contemporaries, their reports through the Talamasca files. You get a sense of what he was like in his day-to-day life, and the convivial parts of it, not just his, dark schemes,
depravity. Depravity.
Right, but Cortland, in the novels at least, we don't really see Cortland's inner life. We only see the sort of depraved events that he was connected to, and I don't want to spoil that exactly for readers, but yeah, you see.
Well, and also for the show, I mean, that could be coming up
here in this. Well, let's talk about it, because
it already did. It came up. Let's into the show.
What we do see, yeah. So Cortland clearly has brought her on purpose. Like, he expected her to come. He's baited her with these, he brings in the handsome men, which, by the way, I assumed that those men were for Cortland at first, and then no, they're bait for his niece. Okay, great.
Well, doesn't Lasher basically send her
loose? Yes. No, Lasher absolutely says what your mother
because
would do
Lasher
on a night
basically
like this.
sends her to Cortland. Right. So he sends her to Cortland knowing full well what's about to happen.
Yep. What your mother would do on a night like this is put on a fancy dress and go on down to Cortland's house. There's always a party there.
Go get fucked by your uncle.
Yeah, you're right.
Sorry.
Okay, so that's the thing. In the novels, it is never explicitly said. It's heavily hinted and implied, and a couple of characters guess at it, that Cortland is actually the biological father of Rowan.
Yes.
Even though he's in the book, he is also Deidre's biological father. Okay.
Yes.
So that is not clear in this episode. Did you read that? Like,
not yet.
Implied that somebody's behind that mask. But I watched it twice. I watched it close. There's no hints that that's Harry.
No, you're very right. You're very, very right. You were 100% correct. At first I was like, did he drug her? Oh, obviously he drugged her when he gave her the fancy family wine. And that makes me feel like, I mean, who else would it be? He set this whole thing up. And Lasher can't do it yet. Lasher can't be in a body like that yet.
Exactly.
Not like that.
Exactly.
So it had to have been Cortland. But I mean, I also think that was because I'm pretty sure, I feel like there was a very strong implication that he had raped her in the book at some point. But I could have made that up in my head as being like what obviously in my brain happened to Deirdre.
Well, I think it's hinted at, much like this, that like there's a party and she gets drugged and she's not sure what happened exactly, but there was somebody in a mask. I think it's literally that. But then when Michael and Aaron are talking about it, Aaron says, of course, we believe that Cortland is not only the father of X and Y and Z, but
Right.
And that's what, but it's never actually, I don't think we see it play out for sure in the novels anywhere. Anyway, that scene, I think it's interesting that they kept the ambiguity. It also lets them play a little fast and loose with the whole incest of it all, at least for now. Leave that up to a mystery, potentially.
Exactly. You don't have to, like, look it in the eye. You don't have to look the incest in the face.
Yeah. Also, Harry Hamlin didn't have to climb on top of that poor little actress either, so that's good.
Please and thank you. That's a uncomfortable age difference.
Especially this Harry Hamlin. God, he's so sweaty. Again, his house was so hot too. Carlotta's I get because like she doesn't believe in air conditioning, I'm sure, and she's trying to let the house burn down. And in the novels, that's even a thing. That she would never allow them to install AC and proper ventilation.
Yeah, they have to modernize the whole house when they move in.
But like, what's Cortland's excuse? Like, he should have the finest AC.
He lives in the damn suburbs. Are you fucking kidding me? Why is this house steamy? Ew, he just likes to be sweaty. That's fucking gross. Ooh. I'm glad he felt as creepy as he did, though.
And listen, I thought the snake was too much.
The snake was a lot.
So based on the trailers, I thought that this was going to be either like a scene where somebody is being seduced by Lasher and, he appears to them in the form of a snake at one moment or something, or it was going to be like drug-induced, nonsense. But I think it's just two really fucking rich people laying there cuddling a snake.
Yeah, it is. I really think it is. It's just fucking weirdos, fucking weird rich people with too much time and money on their hands that now have a pet snake. Jesus.
I want to point out one line earlier. I missed this when we were just talking about Rowan. I had it written here. She quotes to her tech in that surgery scene that I mentioned that I like so much. She turns as she's walking out of the room. They're talking about the best approach for this shitty doctor that they have to deal with. And she says, just remember, the slow blade penetrates the shield. And the tech doesn't get it. And she says, what does that mean? And Rowan goes, it's something, boyfriend, this guy told me at a bar one time or something like that. And my wife was like, what does that come from? I immediately got it and got all excited. Rowan fucked a dude that likes Dune one time. That's from Dune.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That's from Dune. Excellent. Well, here's the thing what's so great about that scene. And it's that every woman that I know that has been in any sort of position where they're jockeying for power or in any sort of management capacity. There are so many times you work with men that in order to get them to agree to anything, you have to convince them that what you wanted to do was their idea in the fucking first place. And this shows that so well. I really appreciate how and also how fucking creepy the stem cell research doctor was. Like that, those are two dudes that women have to fucking deal with all the time. That asshole that you have to convince it's his idea, and the dickhead that wants to try to fuck you or pulls his dick out to pee in front of you. Who does that? So many men.
Let's talk about the guy who builds an open wall urinal in the middle of his office. Like, what the fuck, homie?
What the fuck? What the sad alpha male do you think you're doing? What a piece of trash, man. Yuck. That is an HR nightmare. His poor lawyers.
I would bet money that guy can't spell Rodan, by the way. He was like, there's a Rodan. Got a good deal on it at an open auction. I'm like, yeah, I bet you can't fucking spell Rodan. And quickly, because we have talked long enough about this. Let's call it a masterpiece of a first episode. I do want to quickly cover, though. They come up a couple of times during the episode. I don't think, did we actually get a name drop of the organization here? Did we hear the word Alaska, or was it just,
we did not,
just the agency sort of
New Orleans office?
We know that they're going to call them the Talamasca because the promotion has used it, and there's the number there. They've said the New Orleans office of the Talamasca, et cetera, et cetera. The cards have it on it that we've seen previously, but this card in the show didn't. It was just a T, I think, a logo. But okay, I'm fine with them building the Talamasca up to be a little bit more spy agency-y than they are in the novel, because very frankly, they're a bunch of old librarians in the novel, in the novels, I should say. And that's not super exciting to see on, TV. I get that. But it's weird to me that they make a big production of this like huge office building, and she goes and cranks the wall on the files, et cetera, et cetera. But then it's that same clerk that comes later in person to grab Cyprian Grieve wherever he is and tell him that Lasher's on the move. So I'm like, there's just the one old half blind, half lame clerk hobbling down the hallways of this giant building. Like, that's a little weird. And then the other
lady
thing that
with
really
the
blew my hair
eye.
back. Yeah, right? Like, what is going on there? I mean, good on you, but I don't... Anyway, that was interesting casting. And then secondly, this is the big thing. How the fuck do they know Lasher's on the move? Like, immediately, theoretically. Like they take the necklace off of Deidre. The doctor takes the necklace off, puts it down, and
puts it in her pocket.
Goes to see Rowan. Yeah, puts it in her pocket, and then Lasher goes to see Rowan. And immediately, she comes to see Cyprian and says Lasher's on the move. In what manner is the Talamasca tracking Lasher's...
She could be psychic.
Well, okay, but even if she is, like
it's the Talamasca.
That's not the way. That's not the way he works in the book. That's not the way any of this works in the book. You know.
Look, I'm gonna give him a cheat on this. This is your cheat code. Old lady with the lazy eye can tell what Lasher's up to.
She's like Cerebro for the Talamasca, I guess, all by her lonesome.
Yeah, or like the lady in Poltergeist that clears the house. Magic.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's it. Anyway, I'm willing to roll with the punches with it. I'm excited.
The unexpected heroes, the unexpected psychic heroes.
You know, this organization is very important to our series as well. I say our series like we don't like this one. We're going to love this one. We're going to watch this one. We're going to watch all the series they bring us. But I'm
excited about this one.
Our vampires are going to be directly impacted by the Talamasca. So that is the biggest aspect of this series that I'm still on pins and needles about how they're going to continue to unfold it. I will say the one thing that I haven't really thought about, Cyprian Grieve, no matter what his history with the Talamasca, you know, unlike Michael, who had just been introduced when we get to know him in the books, Cyprian clearly is already a member, at least, but he might not, he's clearly much younger than Aaron Leitner. He's definitely not been with them as long. He may not know the history of the Mayfair Witches. He may not know the stories of the origin. And so that may all be revealed to us as it's revealed to the characters directly. And so that's kind of exciting to me, I think. The evolution of this series as they get past the introduction of Rowan and Cyprian, and we sort of get them all stewing together in New Orleans. I don't know. I'm sort of excited for where this one might go. It was a rocky start, and I don't think it's going to be my favorite TV show of 2023, like Interview was probably of 2022, but still, I'm excited for how this one started. What do you think overall?
Oh, I'm jazzed. I'm really, really excited. I was really impressed with the adaptation. I've got to be really honest. Like, that's the thing that has hooked me, because I know what a beast this book is, and to figure out how to nip and tuck and get it into a form that can be delivered in an episodic kind of way. I was really, really interested to see how they were going to do it, because I don't think it's as clearly on the table as Interview was, like the approach to it. So I think that after seeing how they've started and seeing Alexandria Daddario's performance, I am pretty excited to see how it goes, you know, to see how these characters meet and how they interact. Like, when I'm excited for her to get to New Orleans, I'm excited to see how she gets to New Orleans, because we don't have the link with Michael, which is one of the things that drove her there. She was like, oh, I've met you and you're from there. It all feels very meant to be kind of a thing. So I'm very interested to see, you know, how she finds out about herself and how she, you know, makes that move south.
I think that segues us perfectly into the speculation arena, which I want to dive into now. So if you are not a book reader and you don't want to hear any potential spoilers for where this might could go based on our knowledge of the novels, then now's the time to dip out. We appreciate you. Join our Facebook group, join our Discord community if you'd like to, and make sure you follow the show in your favorite podcast app so that you can get every episode as we drop them. We'll try to drop them by Sunday evening when the episode drops on AMC proper. All right, let's dive into some speculation now, Ashley. Right there on that very point, how is she going to get to New Orleans? I think we know at the end of this episode how she's going to get to New Orleans. Deidre's not dying. She's coming out of her coma.
No.
I think Deidre's going to bring her back to New Orleans.
Okay, that'll be very interesting. Yeah, this doctor, this doctor's thrown a huge wrench in everything, and he clearly feels like the doctor that Aaron has the conversation with in the book. In the very, very beginning, like the very first thing that happens in the book, he feels like that doctor to me. Like immediately, I was like, "Oh, I saw a ghost in New Orleans." Yeah.
It's absolutely that opening scene, except this doctor is going to, at least theoretically, based on the end of this, continue. Now, I mentioned earlier IMDb listings. The actress that is playing Deidre, whose name escapes me suddenly, she is listed in the IMDb listings for 4 total episodes. Well, she's listed for 3, but the pilot is not among them. So she was actually uncredited in this one, apparently. So that would lead me to believe, and also I had forgotten this, but that character appears in one of the trailers in one of the witch circles that we see in one of the trailers. So
I missed
think
that.
Deidre's going to be around at least for a while. I think Deidre is going to be the one who brings Rowan back into the family proper. The interesting thing about that, though, is that then kicks down the road a little bit further. I mean, she can't be the designee in the center of the family if Deidre's still alive. She can't be in control of Lasher, really, theoretically at least, if Deidre's still alive. So it'll be interesting to see how they play that. But I think Deidre's going to stick around longer than she does in the novels.
Oh, for sure. I think that, I mean, she should be dead before Lasher shows up on Rowan's doorstep. So this is really, like, that part's really interesting to me. Did you notice in the opening credits the names in the fading in and out of the wallpaper of the previous witches? So there was Angelique. I caught Angelique. I caught Deborah. Did I catch Deborah's name? Like, there was just like
Deborah.
They would flash
I didn't
in.
see those.
Mm-hmm. They would flash in and out, and it was the names of some of the like classic older witches, the first witches. So I think if you've seen, I'm trying to open IMDb right now to see how many of those kind of characters, if any of those, they've cast in roles yet. Because I thought that was really, really interesting. It caught my eye. Because there's 65 people in this damn cast. Caught my eye almost immediately. Like, we do have Suzanne, who is listed. That's an old witch, but I don't know if that's the case here. You know what I mean? And we've got some Scottish... Wait, we've got Scott...
Was Suzanne... Suzanne's not the first. Suzanne is the first.
Go ahead. Suzanne's the first. She's the one that Lasher calls dumb.
Okay.
He's like the dumb, like they call her simple. Like she was just like playing around and accidentally summoned him.
Right.
It's kind of how they sort of imply. Or she was upset. But there's like, there's some of the, I'm very... And
her daughter's...
Deborah.
Her daughter's the one that then goes with Peter Von Abels to the Talamasca and everything.
Yes, and we have Deborah Mayfair listed in an IMDb character role for 1 episode. So that was just something I caught personally, and it made...
So we will at least get the origins of the family.
Yeah, it looks like at least a little bit. I think we should all pay attention to the opening credits of the show, because they might change as we go along. I love those things when you get little clues and hints in the opening credits.
That would be interesting. I strongly agree. I like anything that makes that like worthwhile watching every time, not just repetitive. Like the Game of Thrones thing, I think is the best example ever, because it literally...
Oh my God, yes.
What locations you were going to be expecting in this episode to episode. It's great. Do you know, have you been watching House of Dragons? Did they do a similar thing?
I haven't yet. I started it and I wasn't in the right mood for it. So I was like, no, I'm not ready for this right now. And I haven't really gone back to it yet. So I know I will eventually. But yeah, that was one of my freaking favorite things about that show. It was so awesome.
I haven't.
To get those little hints. And it was also beautiful and the music was great.
Oh, the music is fantastic for that show, man. I haven't gotten into Game of Thrones, into House of Dragon yet either, for that exact same reason. I just got to be in the right mindset. Speaking of mindset, I just did finish the first season of The White Lotus.
Oh, yes!
And I don't know that I was in the right mindset for it, honestly. It's a good show. It's incredibly well done, but I don't know that I liked it. I mentioned you and I talked about it in the last episode, I think, because I mentioned Alexandria's performance, but she obviously is at the center of that first season. The whole show, though, is a level of like cringe. And I mean, it's purposeful. It's clearly purposely done, but it's just not the kind of thing that I enjoy. So I don't know. Everybody tells me the second season's even better. I am imagining I'm going to watch it because I wanted to watch it, honestly, because it's great TV and everybody says so. It is really well done. It's not going to be in one of my favorite lists, though. So I'm hoping that this performance from Alexandria will rise above.
I think you'll like the second season better.
Well, the second season takes place in Italy, I believe.
Yes, it does. And it's it has a... Yeah, it's super fun. I really loved it. It's wild. It's a wild ride. It's about horrible rich people. I mean, what more do we want to laugh at?
Indeed. All right. Hey, before we get out of here tonight, I do want to remind you, if you're listening to this Monday morning, right after it launches, or late Sunday night, wherever you may be, check us out Monday night on Dorian, the Dorian app. It's interactive storytelling.
Yeah.
We've done a couple of discussion clubs there for Interview with the Vampire. They are officially partnered with AMC again for the Mayfair Witches series. There's going to be new content dropping based on the Mayfair Witches soon in the Dorian app. And they've also partnered with Arcana, which is a different IP entirely, but does have a witchy feel to it. We're going to be talking about witchcraft. We're going to be talking about Mayfair Witches specifically. We're going to be doing a tarot reading, I think, tomorrow night.
A tarot reading. Yeah, I'm so excited. It's going to be a little premiere party.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So join us for that. There will be a link for that in the show notes as well. And we look forward to speaking with you again about the second episode of the Mayfair Witches on AMC and AMC Plus. It's all part of AMC's Anne Rice's Immortal universe, and we will be here to cover it all. Until the next time that we talk to you, we've been your hosts. I'm Joel.
I'm Ashley.
And we are the Articulate Coven. Thanks for listening to The Articulate Coven. You can join our community on Facebook by following the links in the show notes or searching for Articulate Coven on Facebook. You can subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or at articulatecoven.com. And share us with your Anne Rice loving friends.